Welcome to another edition of Horse Center, everyone. I am Brian Zipsy, and as always, I have the fantastic pleasure of being joined by a co-host to the East Coast. That's Matt Schiffman. How are you today, Matt?
I'm good, Brian. It's time to get serious, though, Brian, with the Breeders' Cup. Just barely more than a week away. Enough of the fooling around. Let's get to it.
Pre-entries are in, Matt. We won't be privy to the announcement. The big announcement comes tomorrow, Wednesday. But we're only 10 days away from the Breeders' Cup 2017, a beautiful Del Mar, and we are handicapping in earnest now, Matt. We have a good idea who might be pre-entered and who's going where. So we thought it a good idea for this week to be our Longshot show, folks. We're going to bring out horses that we think can win at some odds, whether they be real bombers or just horses that are going to beat some favorites in here. Matt and I have compiled a list of 15 horses with some odds in several different races. So hopefully we'll hit on some of these. Matt, I know we've done well in the past with these. Champagne Room was one that I liked a little bit last year. You've certainly had some long shots in past. So let's do it again this year, okay?
Let's do it. And it's important, folks, because last year in the Breeders' Cup, only one favorite out of the 13 races was a winner, and that one was obviously, and that horse was almost 4-1.
Is that right, Matt? I didn't realize the favorites took it on the chin so badly last year. That's good information, and I would expect maybe not that big a number from the long shots, but let's get some home, and we're going to give you some of our best right now. Matt, we're going to start with the Turf Sprint. Lady Aurelia is going to be favored. Then you have Disco Partner and Marcia. But I want to throw out a long one who's really gotten into good form. He's coming from Indiana and Kentucky. I think he's going to be largely ignored at the windows. His name is Bucchero. He's getting better and better for trainer Tim Gleishaw, who is hot now. Bucchero has never looked better. The son of Canteros really likes short distances, so I think the 5 furlongs is going to be right up his alley. 2 races ago, he won at Indiana Grand. Last time at Keeneland, he ran pretty darn huge, 5.5 furlongs. He's got tactical speed to be there, and then he's just in fine form to make a big move as they straighten out. So I think Bucchero, whether it be to win or at least fill out the exotics, is a horse with a real shot in the Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint.
Yeah, and it would be another great step in the story of trainer Tim Gleishaw, who got his first graded stakes winner with Bucchero.
Bucchero grade 2, and then a week later, of course, up in Canada, so with a grade 1 winner. So Tim Gleishaw is on fire. Hopefully he can keep it up in the Turf Sprint. Matt, we're going to go to the Filly and Mare Sprint, and I'll let you go first this time.
Sure, and we're both looking for some value here. Unique Bella is one of those favorites, and there were plenty of them last year. Horses that we thought, were really going to be hard to beat, and that's probably true about Unique Bella. But only one favorite last year, so I'm going with Sky Diamonds, and Sky Diamonds is California-based, loves Del Mar, 2 for 2 Del Mar. This horse has won its last 2 races, got everything that I like to see in these sprint races. I love the closers in there, sits in a nice stalking position and gets rolling down the stretch with a strong, powerful run. So I think Sky Diamonds has a legitimate shot. Brian, who do you like in there?
Well, first off, Matt, I think Sky Diamonds makes a lot of sense in here. I think she's a filly who can certainly get the distance. She's won at a mile this year. She's looked great, in fact, at everything a mile and under. And her form out in California is excellent. So I think that's a very good pick. And let me remind people, with Unique Bella, she's probably the most talented filly in the field. But she's a 3-year-old. She's only had 1 race recently. She did look just a little bit hard to handle early in that race. So if she's 3-5, 4-5, I think you have a lot of good options, and I think they'll all have good odds, like Matt and Sky Diamonds. I'm looking for another horse who might be coming even a little farther off the pace. Not to say Highway Star is going to be a horse way, way back early, because she does have some speed, but she finishes her races really well, Matt, in 7 furlongs. And I think that we should mention that it's a distance that's a little bit different. It's an elongated sprint. And if there's a good speed like we expect in here, Horses that can get that last furlong while still all out in a sprint do well at 7 furlongs. And I think Highway Star is an excellent example of that. The New York bred shipper is just ahead, a narrow, maybe an unlucky when she shied in a little bit in the ballerina, away from being 4 for 4 at 7 furlongs. That's a big reason why I like her. She's obviously better than ever out in New York. So at 7 furlongs coming from the middle of the pack, I think she has a big shot, and I think she'll have some nice odds in the filly and mare sprint.
Yeah, and folks, don't be put off because the trainer of Highway Star, Rodrigo Ubalo, is not a famous name, not a household name. He's a talented New York trainer.
Yeah, and she's proven enough this year where I think, we already know how good she is, and I think the nation is going to find out how good she is come the Breeders' Cup. Matt, let's jump back to the 2-year-olds, the juvenile fillies. We've both got one in here, and I think you got a bomber.
Yeah, I think I do, and this is a race where I think 3 out of the last 5 races have been real bombers. Remember in 2014 that Take Charge Brandy won this race at 61-1. So, and there's going to be a big favorite in here with Moonshine Memories, but she's not invincible by any means in here. I like Caledonia Road in here, who's going to be a big price. Ran second in the Frizette, ran a good solid race coming from way off the pace, and I like that, only to lose to Separation of Powers, who pulled away a little bit at the end of the race, and those two were far ahead of the field. And I understand maybe you don't think it's the strongest field, but they put a big distance between. I think this is a horse that has a good shot. I think this is a horse that could get better, and the added distance and the 2 turns I don't think will be a problem.
That's interesting, Matt. Caledonia Road. Yeah, I'm not high on the Frizette moving forward, but I think both of them, you're right. Both of the top 2 from this Frizette. Separation of Powers, I think, will get bet a little bit. And then Caledonia Road, who should be pretty darn high, certainly have room for improvement. Caledonia Road, like you said, only 2 starts. So she'll need to improve, but she might. And I think this is a race with a vulnerable favorite. The favorite, as you mentioned, Moonshine Magic is clearly the best in California so far, but I have not been overly impressed with her races out there. So if she's a clear favorite, this is a race I look for the favorite to lose. I, on the other hand, I'm not going with a bomber. I think she might be maybe even the 4th choice coming from Kentucky, Heavenly Love. I've had the pleasure of seeing both of her last 2 races in person, a sprint at Kentucky Downs, and then the Alcibiades at Keeneland, 2 very different races. One was a sprint on turf, one was 2 turns on dirt at Keeneland, and Heavenly Love really impressed me both times. I think she's better than probably people on the East Coast or the West Coast realize, and she is my top pick. I'd be happy if I got her at about 6-1 in here. So I think Heavenly Love, for me, is the best 2-year-old filly in the country, but I'm going to play her with some long shots, maybe yours a little bit too, because I think this is a race ripe for odds. As maybe the sprint is, Matt, we should have a big favorite in the sprint, and it's the defending champion, but Drefong has only run 2 times, and Drefong is speed. Last year, I think he had a little less speed than he's going to see this year. With that lack of experience, he only finished 1 race this year. I think he's beatable. Who are you going to try to beat him with?
I think we're both looking to beat Drefong in the same kind of way. We're both looking for horses that can rally, considering the pace that's going to be out there, and hopefully Drefong will get challenged this year and set up our horses for a big run. I'm going to go with a little bit of a sentimental favorite here, but a horse that has had just a fantastic race, and that is Whitmore. Whitmore's had a fantastic spring this year, and then ran some little problems, came back, and most recently had a big win in the Phoenix at Keeneland. He's going to come from off the pace and unleash his powerful, relentless drive on the outside down the stretch. And for a horse that has had the year that he's had, he's going to be really big odds, Brian.
Yeah, and you're right. Halfway through the year, we would have thought Whitmore would be one of the favorites. He lost a little form there. The Keeneland win was solid. I don't think that he beat this kind of field, of course. But folks, we're talking about Dre Fong. The second choice should be Roy H, Imperial Hint, Tackleful. We're gonna see a 44 flat. We're gonna see a 43-4 in here. And with good horses that can stick around for 5 furlongs, I think it is set up, as Matt's saying, with Whitmore, for a horse to come from off the pace. And while Whitmore is obviously a good horse and will have some big odds, I just like Mind Your Biscuits clearly better in my eyes. He won't be as high as Whitmore, but he's coming off his only poor race in a long time in the Forego at Saratoga. There were some issues with where he was stabled. Chad Summers was not happy with how his horse was kind of going into that race. He ran very mediocre. I think things are better now for Mind Your Biscuits with all the speed and the races he showed previously and his California form. I expect Mind Your Biscuits, just draw a line through that Forego. I expect the good Mind Your Biscuits to show up at Del Mar, and he's going to be rolling down the lane. I really expect him to win the race. Again, I'm saying he's my top pick, and we might get 10-1 coming off that poor Forego. So I'm looking forward to betting the Biscuits in the sprint.
Brian,
back to the 2-year-olds. Go ahead.
Brian, we get 10-1 on Mind Your Biscuits. I tell you what, I'm going to open up my wallet, because that is some tremendous, tremendous value.
And I think we will, because what have you done for me lately? They're going to look at that Forego and say, let's throw out the Biscuits, and I think the Biscuits will be hot in California again this year. Matt, how about we go back to the 2-year-olds, this time the Colts. Bolt Doro, I think, unlike the juvenile fillies, we recognize the favorite as a really strong favorite. But on the other hand, he's going to be low, and there are interesting horses in the juvenile.
There sure are. And, I saw a couple of workout reports from a couple of people that I really respect that had some little questions about how Bolt Doro looked. His trainer, doesn't have a lot of experience in these big situations. Nobody is unbeatable, as we said. I'm going to go with Good Magic here. I think I'm going to get a good price, because this is a horse that's still a maiden, but has 2 very good races under his belt. Last one was a second in the Champagne, where he made a really nice rallying move, had the lead briefly in the stretch, but was run down by a talented horse in Firenze Fire. I think the 2 turns will be really well suited to Good Magic. I think that will also help maybe a better timed move, so that he may be making the last move. I think it's going to be big odds. I'll take a shot on Good Magic.
Yeah, I like that pick, Matt. Good Magic, despite running second in both his career starts, I think is a horse with a lot of talent and a lot of room to move forward. I like how well he ran in the Champagne. I definitely prefer the Champagne this year to the Frisette. Son of Curlin, I think Good Magic is not only a horse to watch in here as a long shot pick, but also moving forward to next year. I look for good things from Good Magic. Another horse I could say exactly the same about. He's coming off 2 straight losses. He does have 1 win. I'm talking about Hollywood Star, son of Malibu Moon. Dale Romans has been very high on this horse. I've seen this horse work out at Churchill Downs. Really, really think Hollywood Star is going to be a horse to watch out for in the future. Just a really good-looking, as I said, a son of Malibu Moon. He's coming off 2 second-place finishes, but I think both races were strong, and I just see a lot of room for improvement. I like him at a mile and 16th. If he can get a decent pace in here, I think Hollywood Star, much like Good Magic, is a horse that has a big shot to be in the money in the juvenile. And even if Bolt Doro wins, we're picking these 15-1 shots or so to run second. That's not bad either, folks. So don't be afraid to throw him in the exotics underneath as well. Matt's Good Magic is a good pick, and my Hollywood Star. Horses for the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, horses moving forward next year on the road to the Kentucky Derby.
Yeah, Brian, and like you said, our friend Dale Romans has been high on this horse. It's a horse that is gonna do better around the 2 turns and with more distance. So take a shot.
Speaking of distance, we both like Chad Brown's classy 3-year-old in the dirt mile a bit, dropping down to a mile, or I guess he's moving back up from his last race. But we know Practical Joke is better at distances of a mile or so, and he'll get that 2 turns in the dirt mile against older horses.
Yeah, and we talked a little bit about Practical Joke on last week's show. I like him in here. I know there's plenty of statistics saying that he's only a 1-turn horse, but horse has never run a bad race in his career, including his 2-turn races from the Kentucky Derby to the Haskell. He's a competitor. I like what I've seen here. Chad Brown is going to have the horse ready, so I'm going to take a shot on Practical Joke.
Yeah, and this is another race where I think the favorite could be vulnerable. More Spirit has just not run for going on 6 months now. So Practical Joke, there will be pace in here. I think Sharp Aztec ensures that, among others. So Practical Joke will have a little pace to run at, a mile, 2 turns. I'm sure he'll be rallying, whether it's for the win or a lesser spot. I'm sure Practical Joke will rally and will run a good race. So a good long shot pick there in the dirt mile. I'll go with the mile as well, but I'll go on the turf. And Annals of Time from Chad Brown's barn was a horse that I was so high on last year. Lightly raced, just an explosive turn of foot. Got better with each start. Last year as a lightly raced 3-year-old, I loved the Hollywood Derby, where he became a Grade 1 winner late last year. And again, that explosive turn of foot, it makes me think that he's a horse with a ton of talent. Missed most of this year, but he came back with a nice win, 1 race. It was an allowance race in New York, but the horse he beat, Black Tide, has proven to be a really good turf horse late this year. Just won a stake out in New York. Annals of Time went by him. I expect big improvement off that 1 performance, which again was at a mile. So a mile out in California, he's already proven he can run out there. Mile is right up his alley. I expect a kick in on the turn and in early in the stretch. And I think Annals of Time has a shot to shock the world in the turf mile.
I like that pick, especially with the fact that, people looking at PPs are probably maybe only going to see that allowance race there, and that could cause him to be ignored. But I look at that allowance race as Chad Brown getting a confidence builder and a tightener and all the good things that happen in that allowance race to head out to California to run a big one.
All right, Matt, great. We got the dirt mile down. We got the mile down. How about we go to the big one on Friday? I'm on the favorite, folks. Stellar Wind is my filly and mare of choice here. But Matt thinks she's beatable, and he's going to do it with who?
I do think she's beatable, Brian, and we talked about it a little bit last week. There are a number of horses in there. Forever Unbridled is going to be tough, but Forever Unbridled is going to have a good bit of wagering on her. I'm going to go with Elate. Elate is not going to be a bomber by any means, but is going to be a horse that has a little bit of value. It's Belmont. He knows how to win the distaff. This is a horse that's coming into her own. I think this is a horse that's ready to run a big one and will certainly be in it right at the wire.
Yeah, Elate looks good to me, Matt. She's head and shoulders better than she was just 3-4 months ago. I wonder how high she'll be off big wins in both the Alabama and the Beldam, but Stellar Wind is a clear favorite. Forever Unbridled is the second choice. At the worst, I guess you have the third choice. We disagree, in fact, on who the third choice will be. I think Elate, you're saying Abel Tasman, but Elate certainly has a shot, so 5-1 or so. I don't think there are a lot of fillies that can win the race, but I do think after Stellar Wind that Elate is certainly in with a shot in here, as good as she's gotten of late. Another 3-year-old going against older that I'm considering, and I think will have higher odds than Elate, happens in the 1.5-mile turf. His name is Oscar Performance. I love what he did when he shipped out to California, of course, last year, winning impressively in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf. Now, he's only had one race against older horses, and it broke his winning streak that happened in the Joe Hirsch Turf Classic at the hands of Beach Patrol. But I tell you, I like the race because he had never been farther than 10 furlongs before, and he put in a move at the head of the stretch to try Beach Patrol. He did fade a little bit, toughest horse he had ever faced before, and like I said, a quarter mile farther than he ever ran. But I would expect improvement second time at 1.5 miles. I think the California type of turf courses will suit him. So I think Oscar Performance is going to be forgotten a little bit because you have the Euros. And listen, if Highland Real runs his race, he's the horse to beat. Maybe if Ulysses runs his race, the Europeans could be awfully tough in here. But I think of the Americans, Oscar Performance has a real shot, and I think he'll be double digits off the loss. So improvement second time at 12 furlongs. I look for Oscar Performance to run another good race in here.
Yeah, and like we said about some other horses earlier in the show, that will be a horse with a very, very strong set of past performances from this summer, who is gonna have a big price.
Yeah, coming off the loss, a lot of betting boils down to what have you done singularly in the final race. Mind Your Biscuits and Oscar Performance, their odds would have been a lot lower one race ago. But coming off losses, I think you're going to see some decent odds on both of them. Matt and I are going to end the show on a high note, we hope, because the Breeders' Cup Classic, you're going to have some horses get bet, namely Gun Runner and Arrogate, and for good reason. The Horse of the Year title is on the line with those two, but both have question marks, Matt, and I think we could say the same about the third and fourth choices, maybe the fifth choice, Collected, West Coast, Gunnevera, Mubtahij. So that leaves horses with some reason to like in the Classic at big odds. Who's yours?
It sure does, Brian, and I know this is a horse that you like, and I like your horse also a bit in here. But Gunnevera, coming off, a lightly raced campaign at this point of the year, ran a big race in the Travers and is reported to be training extremely well for the Classic. And one thing we know for sure, the distance isn't going to be a problem with Gunnevera, and he's going to come running at the end. The question is, what's the big two going to be doing at the end of the race?
Yeah, and I think it's not out of the question that the big two could be struggling just a little bit with both a strong pace and maybe a track that at least one of them isn't their favorite. So there's a shot for some horses to be making up real ground in the stretch. I don't like Gunnevera to win. I bet him in the Travers a little bit with the IRAP. These were my top two plays in the Travers at the odds. Similarly, I think Gunnevera could run a big race in here. I think it's more likely that he rallies up for second or third at 20-1 or so. And yeah, he's more lightly raced of late, which I think is good. 1.25 miles with some speed, obviously, is good for him. So Gunnevera could certainly get a big check in the Breeders' Cup Classic at big odds. I'm sticking with Pavel. Folks, if you've been watching the show, you know how high I am on Pavel. They found another very tough spot for him again. It looks like he's going Classic and not Dirt Mile. And although I wouldn't be shocked if he does go back to the Dirt Mile. But even in the Classic, I think he's worth a play. Again, I think he's going to be high odds in here. They continue to put him in tough spots, but I think that's because they know how really good and talented he is. Listen, he ran in the Jim Dandy in his second start. He ran in the Jockey Club Gold Cup in the fourth start. So why not try the Breeders' Cup Classic? He's obviously very good, very talented, getting better, getting experience, back in California. I think he's got a shot in here. I think he'll be 20-1 as well. And maybe I'm a year too soon on Pavel, but he's going to be on my tickets in the Classic.
Yes, absolutely, Brian. And, last thing I want to say is, folks, you've heard the way we've talked about these horses. Some of them we felt a little bit more that they might hit the board. Some of them we feel a little more strongly about them in the win position. But if you're going to play horses with big prices like this in the Breeders' Cup because they're big fields, use the horses in the underneath spots. That means maybe win, play, show betting with the big fields. You're going to get good prices in the place and show, or use them in exactas, or use them in trifectas.
Absolutely, Matt. And last year, it was a big pick 4 for me with big pick 4, big pick 5. I don't remember now. But anyway, yeah, throw them in with multiple horses. Some of these races Matt identified as more vulnerable favorites than others. So don't be afraid to throw in a few long shots and have 5 horses in one of those races that you're going horizontally. So that can pay off too. Matt and I gave you 15 horses with odds that we think have a really good shot to run big races at the Breeders' Cup. If only a few of them win, and a few of them hit the board, Matt and I will probably be happy, and we hope you are too. As always, thank you for watching HorseCenter. We appreciate you viewing in every week. We'll be back next week with another big show where we really talk more about our main picks for the Breeders' Cup as well as some plays. As always, please do subscribe to the Horse Racing Nation channel on YouTube and follow Horse Racing Nation on a daily basis. Can I get a parting shot from you, Matt?
Sure. I want to give a big Breeders' Cup thank you to our producer, Brett Workman.
10 days away, folks. Thank you, Brett. Thank you. We'll see you next Tuesday for another edition of HorseCenter. Until then, consider these long shots. We'll see you next week.